Is it true that after your arrest, 17 trucks of cash were taken away from the offices of the MMM? Of course it is true. It all was in the material of the court case. 17 trucks of cash? This is all confirmed by witnesses.
Imagine one man seizing control of nearly a third of Russia's national wealth. Within just 6 months, he slipped through the authorities' fingers for years, daring to rewrite the rules of an entire financial system. His astonishing rise and devastating fall, fueled by greed, desperate faith, and the dream of a new world, still spark fierce debate and divide public opinion. This is the story of Sergei Mavrodi. To understand how this story began and evolved, we must travel back to the mid-20th century, to Moscow in 1955. On August 11th, in an ordinary Soviet family, Sergei Panteleyevich Mavrodi was born. His father, Panteley Andreevich, worked as a simple installer, while his mother, Valentina Fyodorovna, was an engineer-economist. Nothing suggested that this child would grow up to become one of the most famous and controversial figures of his time. The family lived modestly, like most Soviet households. Even the surname Mavrodi sounded unusual. Sergei inherited it from his father, whose roots traced back to Donbass, blending Ukrainian and Greek ancestry. In Greek, Mavrodi means black. From an early age, Sergei demonstrated remarkable energy and curiosity. He was an exceptionally hyperactive child. As a result, he suffered 12 concussions during his childhood, not from fights or dangerous escapades, but simply due to his restless nature. Doctors diagnosed him with a congenital heart defect and doubted he would survive into adulthood. Yet, against all odds, Sergei grew up defying medical predictions. At school, Sergei excelled in math competitions, earning recognition for his outstanding ability in the exact sciences. He read widely, diving deep into scientific texts and theories, yet his performance in other subjects lagged behind. His mind seemingly geared toward precise calculations and logical thinking. Classes like history, literature, and foreign languages felt dull and irrelevant to him. This imbalance, genius in one area and mediocrity in another, may have played a defining role in shaping his future. Driven by ambition, Sergei dreamed of studying at the prestigious Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology, MIPT. However, he failed the entrance exam in physics due to a critical arithmetic error. An ironic twist, wouldn't you say, given his reputation for mastering numbers? This failure marked the first major disappointment in Mavrodi's life, though it would not be the last. After failing to get into MIPT, Sergei enrolled at the Moscow Institute of Electronic Engineering, majoring in applied mathematics. However, academics held little appeal for him. Instead of attending lectures and seminars, he preferred playing preference, a complex card game combining elements of bridge and poker. Despite skipping classes, Sergei's extraordinary memory allowed him to pass exams with ease. He would skim through notes just before the tests, effortlessly absorbing information. His natural intellect and photographic memory helped him succeed academically with minimal effort. In 1978, Mavrodi graduated with a degree in artificial intelligence, earning a diploma that symbolized his exceptional cognitive abilities. Although his early pursuits differed greatly from the ways he would eventually apply his extraordinary talents in the real world, they nonetheless helped lay the groundwork for the practical achievements that would later define his legacy. After earning his diploma, Mavrodi was assigned to work at a computing center, where he spent the next 3 years. His dedication and professional skills earned him respect among his colleagues, and he gradually advanced to the position of head of the programming group. However, the monotony of the computing center's environment soon weighed on him. The routine tasks and limited prospects for career growth seemed stifling. Realizing that the conventional professional path offered neither excitement nor significant opportunities, Mavrodi made a decisive choice to leave his job and seek something far more ambitious. After leaving his job, Sergei Mavrodi turned to illegal entrepreneurship, engaging in the purchase and resale of rare goods. He invested his last savings into a VCR, transforming his home into a small recording studio where he duplicated and sold videotapes. This venture proved highly lucrative, boosting his income to 500 rubles per month, equivalent to approximately 800 euros today, compared to the 300 rubles he earned at the computing center. However, such activities carried significant risks in the Soviet Union, where strict laws prohibited unregistered businesses. The authorities could charge individuals with parasitism, a criminal offense punishable by forced labor. Selling illegal goods was even more dangerous, potentially leading to property confiscation and up to 5 years in prison. Due to the high risk of criminal prosecution, Mavrodi needed an official job to avoid charges of parasitism. To maintain a legal cover, he took a position as a janitor and later worked as a security guard in the Moscow metro. These low-profile jobs provided minimal oversight, giving him the freedom and flexibility to continue his underground business while formally staying within the law. This clever maneuver allowed Mavrodi to sustain his illicit operations while avoiding unwanted attention from Soviet authorities, at least for a while. As Mavrodi's videotape business expanded, he outgrew the modest room in his family's apartment and decided to move into a rented flat. According to Mavrodi, he owned so much equipment that it barely fit into a single truck. His arrival did not go unnoticed. Neighbors watched with curiosity as the young man spent half a day hauling mysterious boxes into his new home. However, the apartment had poor sound insulation, which turned out to be a critical flaw. To make matters worse, the apartment directly above his belonged to the local police chief. Within days, Mavrodi returned to his makeshift studio only to find police officers waiting by the door. This marked his first arrest and his first experience behind bars. He was taken into pre-trial detention, seemingly destined for serious legal trouble. However, 10 days later, Mavrodi was unexpectedly released. He later claimed that during his detention, a Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, CPSU resolution was passed, aimed at correcting excessive legal punishments. This decree allegedly decriminalized certain types of entrepreneurial activity, sparing him from prosecution. Yet this explanation has significant flaws. Historical records suggest that while economic reforms did ease restrictions on small-scale businesses, such leniency was rare and often selectively applied. Given the scope of Mavrodi's illegal operations and his remarkably swift release, many speculate that bribes and local police protection played a more likely role in securing his freedom, a practice not uncommon in the Soviet underground economy of the 1980s. The next 6 years of Mavrodi's life seem to have disappeared from his official biography. However, economists often refer to this period as the time of initial capital accumulation, the crucial stage when wealth is difficult to acquire but easy to multiply later. It is likely that Mavrodi continued to duplicate videotapes during these years. By 1986, however, the emergence of licensed cassette shops and video rental services had drastically reduced demand for his underground business. Faced with dwindling profits, Mavrodi needed a new venture. His breakthrough came with the introduction of the law on individual entrepreneurial activity, which legalized private business in certain sectors of the Soviet economy. For Mavrodi, the law seemed like a sign of destiny. He promptly gave up the tape-duplicating business, sold his equipment, and teamed up with his brother, Vyacheslav Mavrodi, to enter the world of legitimate entrepreneurship. The brothers began trading anything they could get their hands on, experimenting with various goods in the emerging Soviet market. However, their early business ventures were far from successful and yielded inconsistent returns. Nevertheless, the experience would lay the foundations for Mavrodi's future empire, a venture on a scale few could have imagined at the time. In 1989, Sergei, Vyacheslav, and Vyacheslav's wife, Olga Melnikova, registered their enterprise under the name MMM, derived from the first letters of their surnames. Mavrodi and his partners decided to engage in one of the most profitable businesses of the time, supplying and selling office equipment. Sergei's organizational abilities allowed him to quickly establish the necessary business contacts and successfully launch the venture. Mavrodi also demonstrated a talent for promoting his enterprise. For example, when metro fares rose significantly, Mavrodi saw an opportunity, and on July 31, 1991, he held a promotional event offering free metro rides to anyone who wished. Rumor has it that this campaign cost Mavrodi $1 million, and similar promotions were held more than once afterward. During those days, every metro station displayed advertising posters with the company's 3-letter logo, and a reminder that the free rides were courtesy of MMM. The cooperative managed to expand beyond the borders of Moscow, and even before the collapse of the Soviet Union, the MMM system included dozens of branches across the country. In addition to selling office equipment, the cooperative was involved in selling consumer electronics, stock market activities, and even organizing beauty contests, at one of which the head of MMM, Sergei Mavrodi, met his future wife, Elena Pavlichenko. Enough about his biography. Let's delve into Sergei Mavrodi's entrepreneurial maneuvers. In 1994, he made a decision that would forever change his life and the destinies of millions of people. He restructured MMM by starting to sell shares. But these weren't just ordinary shares. Their value grew at a staggering rate, reaching up to 1,000% per year. Essentially, every amount invested would almost double each month. By comparison, at the time, banks offered modest interest rates on deposits that barely covered the rapid inflation. Against the backdrop of economic instability and a loss of trust in the banking system, many perceived Mavrodi's offer as a lifeline, a real opportunity not only to preserve their savings but to multiply them. Today, it's clear that such returns were pure fantasy. This raises two logical questions. Why did people rush en masse to invest their money there, and why didn't the government intervene? Let's start with the state. In the 1990s, it did not yet have reliable legislation and clear regulation mechanisms that exist today. Mavrodi actively used loopholes in the law, allowing him to manage business practically without consequences. For example, after some time he stopped selling shares and replaced them with so-called MM tickets, paper notes styled like dollars, bearing his likeness. This arrangement was framed as a form of voluntary donations. Investors donated money at exchange points and, in return, received MMM tickets. When people exchanged the tickets back for money, it was formally Mavrodi who was donating his funds to them. This legal construction allowed him to circumvent numerous restrictions, including regulations on share price growth. Why did people trust it? There were several reasons. First and foremost, financial illiteracy. The majority of people had no understanding of how the stock market worked and failed to realize that such high returns were not feasible in the long run. They lacked the knowledge to recognize a scheme based on a pyramid structure. Secondly, the incredibly successful and aggressive advertising campaign. MMM's advertising was everywhere, on television, in newspapers, on street billboards. It was impossible to ignore. Simple and memorable stories, like the one about a man who, thanks to MMM, could first buy boots for his wife and later a car, became popular legends. Such narratives symbolized success and instilled in people the belief that anyone could become rich. Before long, word of mouth also played a significant role. The first investors truly received the promised incredible payouts. Stories of their success spread like wildfire. People saw their neighbors, friends, or colleagues suddenly becoming wealthy and rushed to invest as well. The buzz kept growing, creating the illusion of stability and reliability. No one wanted to be left out, missing the opportunity of a lifetime. And the final element in the rise of MMM was the psychological factor. In the early 1990s, with Russia in the middle of a severe economic crisis, people were desperate for hope, any hope. MMM offered just that, a simple, clear, and enticing promise. The scheme seemed like a fairy tale. Invest your money and watch it multiply effortlessly. Exhausted by poverty, inflation, and an uncertain future, many Russians were willing to ignore obvious risks for the chance of a miracle. Sergei Mavrodi, a master manipulator and talented psychologist, cleverly played on these emotions. He understood the collective yearning for stability and prosperity and crafted a narrative that resonated deeply with ordinary people. His charisma and strategic messaging turned ordinary citizens into loyal believers, willing to hand over their last savings in pursuit of quick, effortless wealth. Through clever marketing, including bold television advertisements with catchy slogans, Mavrodi reinforced the illusion of stability and endless profits. His ability to create trust while operating a highly unstable system remains one of the most compelling aspects of the MMM phenomenon. But how then did Mavrodi manage to ensure the payouts? MMM operated according to the classic financial pyramid model, also known as a Ponzi scheme. The essence of this model is both simple and ingenious. The profits of the first investors are paid out from the contributions of new participants. As long as the flow of new investors grows, the pyramid flourishes, payments are made regularly, and everyone is satisfied. But the moment the influx of newcomers slows down, the pyramid begins to collapse. There is not enough money to pay everyone, and the overwhelming majority of investors end up empty-handed. In practice, financial pyramids rarely last long because as the number of investors grows, so does the requirement for a constant influx of new participants. However, Sergei Mavrodi had his own views on the sustainability of such systems. One of his frequent arguments was that the money withdrawn by investors often returns to the pyramid in the form of new deposits. In his opinion, this factor is not accounted for in traditional mathematical models predicting the inevitable and swift collapse of pyramids. Moreover, he claimed that even in the event of a complete halt in new investor inflows, the pyramid could theoretically become self-contained. In that scenario, money would no longer leave the system, supposedly ensuring its infinite existence. Despite his immense wealth, Mavrodi led an astonishingly modest lifestyle. He lived in an apartment he had inherited from his parents and did not own any expensive cars or foreign real estate. According to him, he visited a restaurant only once in his life and never traveled abroad. He claimed that money did not interest him. It was merely a tool for realizing his dream. His goal was not personal enrichment, but rather to transform the world. Mavrodi believed that modern capitalist society creates conditions under which most people become dependent on oligarchs and financial institutions. In his view, capitalism is structured so that the majority are forced to work for the enrichment of the wealthy, receiving only minimal income to sustain their existence. He described this system as a form of economic slavery, where people do not truly own their lives since they are completely dependent on wages, bank loans, and mounting debts. In this system, according to Mavrodi, real power lies solely in the hands of those who control large amounts of capital and the financial institutions that oversee all aspects of the economy. How large was the M financial pyramid at its peak, and how did the government become involved? At its height, MMM reportedly had around 10 to 15 million investors. Exact numbers are difficult to verify because MMM was not an official financial institution, and the company itself did not keep a formal record of the tickets it issued. Estimates suggest that the pyramid's turnover ranged between 100 billion and 1.5 trillion rubles. Long before the turnover reached such astronomical figures, MMM and its founder, Sergei Mavrodi, had already begun to attract government attention. The sheer size of the capital flowing through MMM only amplified the authorities' interest and intensified their pressure. When the MMM financial pyramid grew to an astonishing size, the government could no longer ignore its existence. The company became a virtual state within a state, and its founder emerged as a figure who inspired both admiration and fear. Enormous crowds gathered daily at Mavrodi's offices, with lines stretching for several city blocks. This spectacle not only symbolized the pyramid's explosive growth, but also underscored the mounting social instability it created. Realizing the escalating threat to both the economy and society, the authorities took action on all fronts. Television channels began airing anti-pyramid campaigns, warning citizens of the looming dangers. Special programs were produced to expose how MMM deceived its investors. These measures targeted not only the company's reputation, but also the public's trust in its founder. Yet Sergei Mavrodi proved to be a far more cunning opponent than anticipated. He skillfully manipulated people's emotions, continually assuring them of the pyramid's stability. As pressure mounted, he took a bold and unexpected step that would challenge the government's efforts even further. Sergei Mavrodi put forward his candidacy for the State Duma. After obtaining a parliamentary mandate, he gained temporary immunity from criminal prosecution, further complicating the authorities' efforts. On evening news broadcasts and popular talk shows, the pyramid schemes were exposed. Scenes of outraged investors who couldn't get their money back were shown, and economists issued warnings of an inevitable collapse. The authorities skillfully used people's fear and anger to make them doubt Mavrodi's infallibility and his promises. Against this backdrop, the crowds outside MMM offices became increasingly tense. Those who had not yet invested rushed to do so, afraid of missing their last chance at wealth. Others, on the contrary, tried to withdraw their funds, sensing that something was amiss. At some point, the crowds turned into spontaneous demonstrations, and the police were forced to intervene more and more frequently to keep the situation under control. Mavrodi, however, continued to publicly claim that a conspiracy was being waged against him. He called on people not to trust the state media and assured them that MMM was unshakable. This strategy did indeed work on many, but by that time the number of those who had lost their money was already too great to ignore. The confrontation culminated when the financial flows of the pyramid began to dry up. The influx of new investors dropped sharply under the pressure of the information war, while the obligations to earlier participants continued to grow. The company could no longer fulfill its promises. Mass defaults began, followed by complete collapse. Crowds of angry people took to the streets, demanding justice. In 1994, Sergei Mavrodi, the founder of one of Russia's most notorious financial pyramids, lost his parliamentary immunity by decision of the State Duma. Immediately afterward, he was charged with large-scale fraud. However, before the law could catch up with him, Mavrodi spent several years in hiding from law enforcement, which significantly prolonged the process of bringing him to justice. The investigation and trial took a considerable amount of time, and it was not until 2007 that the court handed down its verdict, a 5-year prison sentence. But one question remains. Millions of people had become investors in the company, and when the system collapsed, enormous sums that formed the financial fundament of MMM were left beyond reach. Obviously, part of these funds was used for operational needs, payments to participants, employees' salaries, and extensive marketing efforts. However, a significant portion of the money should have remained, funds that could have been used to compensate the huge number of victims. Where did they go? One of the most prominent and widely discussed theories is Sergei Mavrodi's own explanation. He claimed that after his arrest, armed masked men arrived at the company's office and carted away massive amounts of cash using 17 trucks. According to Mavrodi, this information surfaced in court, and several witnesses testified under oath that they saw the money being taken away in an unknown direction. On the other hand, government agencies presented a completely different version. According to their position, by the time of Mavrodi's arrest, the funds had already been spent. The enormous resources attracted by MMM were supposedly diverted into maintaining its operations, large-scale marketing campaigns, employee salaries, and the general infrastructure of the company. The government also emphasized that some of the funds may have been spent on Mavrodi's personal expenses and those of his inner circle. However, this version raises questions. Mavrodi led an extremely ascetic lifestyle. He had neither luxurious real estate nor expensive cars, and no foreign bank accounts. Even after his arrest and a thorough investigation, no signs of significant savings were found, neither in his own name, nor among his relatives, nor other individuals associated with MMM. His only notable possessions were a small house by Lake Seliger and a Moscow apartment furnished with Soviet-era furniture and a library. This casts doubt on the idea that he spent the funds on personal needs. So, what really happened to the investors' money in MMM? Were they secretly taken away and hidden, redistributed among participants, or consumed by the company's operating costs? This question remains unanswered. The mystery of MMM's billions continues to intrigue, generating debate, theories, and legends. The criminal case materials are not publicly available, making it impossible to verify whether Mavrodi told the truth about the mysterious removal of the funds. For now, this story remains fertile ground for conjecture and discussion, and without key evidence, it may well remain an unsolved enigma.